Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman ended in 1998, and the cast scattered in ways nobody predicted. One was killed crossing a street at 91. Another went home to Oklahoma and never left. Here is where every face from Colorado Springs is now, and where three of them are laid to rest. Number 1 is Jane Seymour, and she took the job because she was broke. Her third husband, David Flynn, had managed her money, sunk it into real estate deals that collapsed, and left her roughly $9 million in debt by the time their marriage ended in 1992. He filed for bankruptcy, and she still had to pay him $10,000 a month in support. She later said she was traumatized and simply did what she had to do, which was earn back what he had lost. What she found instead was the role of her life. She played Dr. Michaela Quinn, the refined Boston physician carving out a practice on the rough Colorado frontier. Seymour was 41 when the show premiered on January 1, 1993, and it made her the anchor of Saturday Night, winning her a Golden Globe in 1996. The set gave her far more than a paycheck. James Keach, one of the show's regular directors, became her fourth husband in 1993, and in November 1995 she gave birth to twin sons, John and Christopher, at age 44. That marriage lasted 2 decades before ending in 2015, and with her 2 older children, Catherine and Sean, from the Flynn years, she raised 4 in all. Queen Elizabeth appointed her an officer of the Order of the British Empire in 2000, and the woman who once had nothing built her own business in painting, jewelry design, and her Open Hearts Foundation. Today she is 75, lives in Malibu, stars in the mystery series Harry Wild, and is engaged to musician John Zambetti. Michaela Quinn was a woman who started over in a town that doubted her. Jane Seymour did the same thing in real life and came out wealthier in every sense. The second name spent nearly 10 years cooking in a Hollywood restaurant before anyone pointed a camera at him. Joe Lando was a chef who studied acting between shifts, and a waitress he met at work in the late 1980s, Kirsten Barlow, would come to matter more than any casting call. First came the storm. Lando played Byron Sully, the long-haired mountain man who slowly won the heart of the town's lady doctor. During the making of the pilot, he and Jane Seymour fell for each other in real life, and when that romance collapsed, the 2 leads of a show built entirely on their chemistry stopped speaking. Seymour admitted years later that they talked only when the script demanded it, right up until the cameras rolled on their love scenes. Millions of viewers sighed over a couple who could barely share a lunch table. Time repaired what the breakup broke. Lando married Kirsten, the waitress from his kitchen days, on May 24, 1997, while the show was still on the air, and they remain married today with 4 children, Jack, Christian, Kate, and William. The old frost with Seymour thawed so completely that he joined her Irish mystery series Harry Wild as a charming pathologist, and their reunion season reached screens in June 2026, nearly 3 decades after Sully hung up his tomahawk. He is 64 now, and the fans who wanted Sully and Dr. Mike together forever finally got their wish, just on a different show. Sully was the fantasy of the perfectly devoted partner. Joe Lando turned out to be the real thing, for a waitress named Kirsten rather than a doctor named Michaela. The next man on this list survived the Hollywood blacklist, only to be killed a block from his own theater. His death is the hardest one here to hear. On the night of February 7, 2020, Orson Bean, 91 years old, was crossing Venice Boulevard in Los Angeles, heading for the Pacific Resident Theater, where his wife was working that evening. A westbound car clipped him and knocked him to the pavement. As bystanders tried to wave off traffic, a second driver, distracted, struck him again, and that collision killed him. On Dr. Quinn, he had been Lauren Bray, the grumbling storekeeper whose crust hid a soft and lonely heart. The life behind that face was enormous. Born Dallas Frederick Burroughs in Burlington, Vermont, he lost his mother to suicide and left home at 16. By the 1950s, he was a rising comedian, until he attended 2 Communist Party meetings to impress a girlfriend and landed on the blacklist. He joked forever after that he was banned because he had a cute communist girlfriend, and within a year he had worked his way back. Johnny Carson welcomed him onto The Tonight Show more than 200 times. To Tell the Truth kept him on its panel into the 1990s, and in the early 1970s, he dropped out entirely to live on a commune farm in Australia. His third wife, actress Allie Mills, the mother from The Wonder Years, married him in 1993 and stayed 27 years, until that night on Venice Boulevard. Bean was cremated and his ashes were scattered at sea, so there is no grave to visit. Venice answered that absence by naming a stretch of street in his honor near the theater he loved. Lauren Bray spent 6 seasons pretending the world had passed him by. Orson Bean never once let it, and he died at 91 on his way to another show. Fourth comes the teen idol who walked away and earned the title of Doctor for real. Chad Allen booked his first job at 4 years old, a McDonald's commercial, and grew up playing Tommy Westfall, the autistic boy on Saint Elsewhere, whose snow globe closed out that entire series with one of the strangest endings in television history. He was still a schoolboy through those 5 seasons on the hospital drama, and by his early teens the fan mail arrived by the sack. Teen magazines plastered his face across America during his years on Our House. Dr. Quinn then handed him Matthew Cooper, the eldest of the 3 orphans the lady doctor inherits, a role he carried from age 18 to 23 as the boy grew into the town's young lawman. Adult work followed, including the 2005 film End of the Spear, in which he played the missionary pilot Nate Saint, and a run of detective movies with his name above the title. In 2015, after more than 30 years on camera, he announced he was finished with acting and with public life. Hollywood has heard that speech 1,000 times. Allen meant every word. He finished a psychology degree at UCLA that same year, earned a doctorate in psychology from Antioch University, New England in 2020, and in April 2022 announced he had passed his licensing exam, calling it the last big hurdle in 7 years of hard work. Today, he is 52 and practices as a clinical psychologist, one of the only former child stars who traded fame for a license to sit with people in their worst moments and help. Matthew Cooper grew up on screen learning to look after everyone around him. Chad Allen turned that instinct into a profession, and this time, the doctor title is real. At number 5 stands the only member of this cast who ever won a lead actress Emmy. Barbara Babcock was born on an Army post at Fort Riley, Kansas, the daughter of General Conrad Stanton Babcock Jr., an officer who rode for the United States in the 1936 Olympics. And she spent much of her childhood in Tokyo, where she learned to speak Japanese before she spoke English. Wellesley College educated her alongside Ali McGraw, and television kept her busy for 5 decades, from Star Trek in the 1960s to the boardrooms of Dallas, where she played department store executive Liz Craig for 4 years. Her stunning moment came in 1981, when a handful of appearances as Grace Gardner on Hill Street Blues won her the Primetime Emmy for Outstanding Lead Actress in a Drama Series over stars with 10 times her screen time. Dr. Quinn gave her Dorothy Jennings, the widowed frontier newspaper woman with a steel spine, and the role brought her another Emmy nomination in 1995. Her private life stayed small and guarded. One marriage to Jay Sheffield ended in 1968, and she never remarried and never had children. In 2004, 2 things arrived together: retirement from acting and a diagnosis of Parkinson's disease. She settled in Carmel, California, and that is where she lives today at 89, the oldest surviving member of the Colorado Springs Company, 2 decades into an illness she has faced without complaint and almost entirely out of view. Dorothy Jennings ran a newspaper in a town full of men who underestimated her. Barbara Babcock has spent 20 years refusing to be defined by a diagnosis, and the quiet grit is the same. The man who comes next died in the same small town where he was born, and nobody outside his circle knows where he rests. Number 6 is Larry Sellers, and his ending was as private as his life was open-hearted. He came from Pawhuska, Oklahoma, born October 2, 1949, of Osage, Cherokee, and Lakota descent, and he broke into pictures the hard way, as a stuntman taking falls so other men could keep their faces clean. Dr. Quinn made him Cloud Dancing, the Cheyenne medicine man who served as the conscience of the entire series for 6 seasons. Sellers treated the part as a responsibility rather than a role, carrying into it the traditional ceremonies he had practiced in his own life for 4 decades. Away from the cameras, he spent years teaching beginner classes for the Osage Nation's language department, standing in front of students week after week so that the words of his people would outlive him, and he traveled to schools to talk with children about native traditions and customs. When the series wrapped, he did not chase Hollywood. He went home to Oklahoma, back to the hills where his story began. On December 9, 2021, he died at his house in Pawhuska at 72, in the same small town where he had been born, and no cause of death was ever made public. His funeral was kept private, in keeping with the traditional ceremonies he had practiced for 4 decades, and his burial place has never been disclosed. No cemetery name, no marker for fans to find. The man who spent his life showing others exactly where he came from chose to leave no map to where he ended. Cloud dancing was written as the wisest soul in Colorado Springs. Larry Sellers earned that reputation in Oklahoma, in a language he refused to let die. Lucky number 7 was 9 years old when America met him. Sean Tuvey was born in Lincoln, Nebraska, moved with his family to San Antonio at 4, and landed in California just in time to become Brian Cooper, the youngest orphan, the little boy the entire town helped raise. He grew up in front of the audience, collecting a shelf of young artist honors along the way, including the Michael Landon Award in 1996, and he stayed loyal to the very end, returning as Brian for the reunion movies in 1999 and 2001. Then, he managed something almost no former child actor pulls off. He simply stopped, with no scandal, no tell-all, and no comeback tour. Tuvey married his wife Marianne in May 2007 and built a life back in Nebraska, where he has worked at the Omaha Children's Museum as director of guest experience, spending his days building wonder for kids the same age he was when he first rode into Colorado Springs. When a Dr. Quinn fan podcast tracked him down for an interview, listeners found a cheerful 40-something with warm memories and zero bitterness, still happy to talk about the family he found on that set. He is 43 now, the youngest survivor of the cast. Brian Cooper was the child a whole town protected. Sean Tuvey grew into a man who protects childhood itself, one museum visit at a time. 8th on the roster is a woman who appeared in barely a handful of episodes, and she may be the biggest movie star on this list. Diane Ladd played Charlotte Cooper, the frontier midwife bitten by a rattlesnake in the pilot, who uses her dying breath to ask the new lady doctor to raise her 3 children. That one scene launched the entire series, earned Ladd an Emmy nomination, and echoed something unbearably real from her own life. In May 1962, Ladd and her husband Bruce Dern lost their first daughter Diane Elizabeth, just 18 months old, who slipped through a pool gate while the maid was on the telephone and drowned in the family pool. Ladd said you never truly get over such a loss. The marriage to Dern held on until 1969, and in 1967 they had another daughter, Laura Dern, who became her mother's closest collaborator and greatest pride. Diane went on to earn 3 Academy Award nominations for Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, Wild at Heart, and Rambling Rose, and that last film made history because she and Laura became the first mother and daughter ever nominated for Oscars for the same movie. On November 3, 2025, Diane Ladd died at her home in Ojai, California at 89, and it was Laura who told the world. Her death certificate listed respiratory failure brought on by interstitial lung disease, an illness she had fought for years. She was cremated on November 10, 2025, and no public record says where her ashes were placed. A quiet ending for a woman the movies could never quite contain. Charlotte Cooper's dying act was securing a future for her children. Diane Ladd lived that same act for 63 years, pouring everything she had into the daughters she raised. Which of these stories caught you most off guard? Tell me in the comments which cast member you remembered and which one you had completely lost track of. The 9th spot goes to the girl who walked away from a hit show at 15. Erica Flores was the first Colleen Cooper, the bright orphan daughter who dreamed of becoming a doctor, just like the woman raising her. While the rest of the cast signed 5-year contracts, Flores hesitated and asked for a shorter deal, and when she wanted out midway through season 3, the producers doubled her salary to keep her. She still said no. The official statement called it a mutual parting for personal reasons. The producers confirmed they had honored her request to go, and Flores has always denied the rumors about family pressure and money that swirled around her exit. Whatever the full truth, in 1995, a teenager turned down a doubled paycheck on one of the most watched shows in America, and furious fans wrote to CBS demanding answers. Acting never fully reclaimed her. A few scattered roles followed over the years, guest spots here and there, and her final credit came in a 2009 episode of House. She married Bart Burson in 2006, raised 2 children, and at 46 lives entirely outside the industry, she once stunned. Colleen Cooper wanted a bigger life than the one she was handed. Erica Flores decided the smaller, quieter life was actually the bigger one, and she has never once come back to argue the point. If endings like these stay with you the way they stay with me, subscribe, because the classic casts we cover here deserve to have their full stories told. Entry 10 had the hardest job on the show, replacing a Colleen the audience already loved. Jessica Bowman was around 14 when she stepped into the role midway through season 3, facing viewers so angry about the recast that they wrote protest letters to CBS. She answered them with work. The Walnut Creek, California native refused to imitate her predecessor, played the part her own way, and within a year won the Young Artist Award for Best Young Actress in a Drama Series. And she went on to carry Colleen all the way through the character's wedding and departure for medical school in the finale. After the show, she turned up in Joyride, Derailed, and 50 First Dates. Then, let the career fall silent, and her last credit was a short film in 2011. Since then, Bowman has withdrawn from public life so thoroughly that no reliable source can even say what she does for a living, and she has never given a bitter interview about any of it. She is in her mid-40s now, living precisely as privately as she chooses, one of the rare child actors whose disappearance was a decision rather than a downfall. Colleen Cooper left Colorado Springs for medical school and was never seen in town again. Jessica Bowman managed the same graceful exit in real life, and only one of those disappearances was scripted. Before the list ends, meet a woman who shared a Broadway stage with Helen Hayes at 6 years old. Number 11 is Jonelle Allen, the prodigy hiding in plain sight behind a Frontier cafe counter. She grew up in Harlem's Sugar Hill neighborhood, the only child of a postal worker and a transit worker, performing from the age of 4 and reaching Broadway at 6 in the Wisteria Trees, sharing a stage with Helen Hayes while her classmates learned to read. Professional children's school fit lessons around her bookings, because the bookings never stopped. By 1971, she was originating the role of Sylvia in Joseph Papp's Two Gentlemen of Verona, a performance that swept the Drama Desk, Theater World, and Outer Critics Circle honors and earned her a Tony nomination for Best Actress in a Musical. Television took 2 more decades to give her a role worthy of that talent, and it finally arrived as Grace, the cafe owner who fed every soul in Colorado Springs across 106 episodes. Marriage found her 3 times, and the third, to Leo Eaton, lasted from 2003 until his death in 2020, left her a widow at 72. Grief did not stop her. She appeared in American Crime Story in 2016 and 911 in 2021. And at 78, she is still performing, more than 7 decades after her first stage. Grace ran the only kitchen in town and made sure nobody went away empty. Jonelle Allen has been doing exactly that for audiences since Harry Truman was president. The last name on this list earned a Purple Heart before he ever earned a screen credit. Closing things out is Henry G. Sanders, born in Houston, Texas in 1942, who served 2 tours in Vietnam with the Army and came home wounded and decorated. Acting caught him almost by accident, and he said in a 1996 interview that he simply fell into it. In 1977, director Charles Burnett cast him at the last minute as Stan, the exhausted slaughterhouse worker and killer of sheep, after the first choice for the part could not get paroled in time. That tiny film, shot for almost nothing in Watts, was selected for the Library of Congress National Film Registry in 1990 and is now taught as one of the great American movies about Black working life. Dr. Quinn audiences knew him as Robert E., the formerly enslaved blacksmith who builds a business and a marriage in a town still learning what freedom means, and week after week, opposite Jonelle Allen's Grace, he delivered a portrait of dignity that Saturday night television had rarely made room for. The work never stopped after that. He played Cager Lee, the grieving grandfather, in Selma in 2014, appeared in Samaritan in 2022, and at 83 he is still working with no scandal and no tragedy attached to his name. Only half a century of showing up. Robert E. built his freedom one horseshoe at a time. Henry G. Sanders built one of the most quietly respected careers in American film exactly the same way. The cast is scattered now. Malibu, Carmel, Omaha, a private farewell in Pawhuska, ashes on the Pacific. Colorado Springs was the only place they ever shared.